Robert felt like he was being conned. She blurted a nasty demand for $85,000 in gift form, showing her hand and becoming raw emotion from Sarah. Returning home with such unmitigated gall, months after absolutely shattering my life by running away with my fiancé, was enough reason for me not to forgive her immediately, even if she is bearing new fruit. My father, as did I with the migrants at Our Lady of Perpetual Challenges, a story for another time, told her to get out in that deep voice of his, pointing out she was mistaken if expecting a welcome mat laid out 11th hour, and all of a sudden seemingly traumatic home birth plan. As aggressive as Sarah could be, she did not come with the realization that when she returned no one would welcome her home, and neither was gone as well. My name is Caroline Judy. I am 28 and soon to be Dennis. A year before my wedding, a group of those friends had heaved an audible sigh. Thank God, girl. It was starting to be B&I Hannah up in this camp. Put me at a social event they can support, even though I thought it was none of their business. Because of the way I look, there are things that have always been sure when it comes to physical attributes. I had room for doubt in me since childhood that anyone could ever find me attractive. At that meeting, I met Dennis, fateful. The king of red cups, Dennis walked right up to little old me. Even his simple greetings had my heart racing. He appreciated the accompanying elbow grease and made my bookish, less exuberant history seem worthwhile. I was calm, whereas Dennis is high maintenance. Guess what was so shocking about that? He became my first official boyfriend. Life became enjoyable and fun, with simple things now, including shared joy in movies and dinners, etc. 1 year later, he proposed, and we started to plan our wedding. The relationship flourished, even with his friendly demeanor and dashing good looks that I had felt were entirely too beyond me. When I introduced Dennis to my parents, my mother squealed in delight. Not at the sight of her only son having apparently found happiness with a nice young man. Rather, she asked, once Deanne was out of earshot, why on earth could he ever fancy someone so ugly? It was embarrassing how surprised she had been that I could get a guy as handsome as Dennis to like me. To which she retorted, quite naturally now you can even jocular type. But it perturbed my father and simply told her to never say things like that. One of those being that my mother once insulted me about my appearance, her home remedies and suggestions on which parts she thought needed fixing through plastic surgery zapped on the confidence I have in myself. Sarah, my older sister, who is beautiful besides, has been the family's admiration, and any small compliment that was ever paid to me paled in comparison. Throughout the marriage introduction, I was praying for true support from my family. But instead, what I kept getting eventually were unnecessary words of undermining both time and again. And Sarah waltzed in and changed everything. Dennis was smitten by her beauty and charm. Their crowding out of Sarah and my journey home, with Dennis's endless accolades, tossed me to the side. Sarah's unrepentant and pregnant reappearance, along with her inconvenient request of a grand gift, breaks the intricate balance in family relations. Unfortunately, such a cavalier avoidance of the fallout from her actions illuminates how challenging it is to forgive and be forgiven by other members in your clan when you have broken faith with them. Through all this struggle, my journey to self-acceptance and love, in the midst of insecurities and others defining me, has paved a path that continues to defy the odds even after nearly 2 years later. But throughout the book, there is no question that Dennis admired Carolyn's family, even when he was mildly shocked at finding out her father had saved $85,000 for their wedding. He was far too excited to care that they were, in their own way, beautiful people who had been nothing but kind and generous towards him. And besides, how great would it be? A beautiful sister or a dad with things. Carolyn liked his light-hearted manner, which was a good counterpoint to her own worrying ways. But what a difference another week made for Dennis. He said it casually, and with the lack of muscle, you might hear someone talking about a slight chance for rain. Let's just call this off. Carolyn was all smiles from confusion, at first not understanding the weight of his words. There were no soft feelings on Dennis's side. He told her out of the blue that he'd never really loved until loving Becky, and then left as abruptly as she had come into his life. He confessed to fantasizing about the perks of being with Carolyn, but shirked from having an eternity shackled platonically to someone he felt no physical affection towards, which is why he chose Sarah instead. Carolyn went from already having no self-esteem to hearing the nail in her coffin, aka Richard. The 12 turning 13-year-old Sarah, who was ecstatic to be engaged to Dennis, and the family's aftermath, added something like salt into a wound. As if it did, Sarah's mother hosted a lavish feast in celebration of her daughter and future son-in-law getting married, all the while blind to Carolyn's hurt. Her father, though, was visibly shocked and disappointed, his movements betraying a kind of sorrow that seemed new to the both of them. With Sarah cruelly taunting their father, the family situation broke completely and ended in such ugly confrontation, where he drove her mother away calling after them, that he could no longer bear to witness more of his very own blood being abused by daughter. At the time, Carolyn's father was too emotional to properly respond, but after he got calmer apologized and alluded that there is a much deeper truth. Carolyn, Dennis, and Sarah, this is a look at how betrayal and family patterns can obscure who we are when caught in the trauma created by loved ones. Featuring a sister who takes full advantage of Carolyn's heartache and embarrassment, the novel delves into how we can grow from finding compassion in some seriously devastating life scenarios. I searched for power and approval, assured it was a good thing that everything crumbled before the first step down to my husband. If a man like Dennis could betray me the way he had, I figured that was just one tick of infidelity down, and many more to go. I tried to be brave, but my tears came anyway. My dad reassured me of his love, squeezing my hand tightly and giving me the moment to let it all out. Sarah and Dennis, long ago stories to be concluded, as so that their lives went on without me, were followed by a hug from him after this painful chapter instead of the other way around. The parting was a small consolation given the emotional devastation it left in its wake. As time passed and I went farther away, the edge of this wound dulled a bit each day as my life took one small step after another towards normality. It's been a year now since all this craziness went down, and the wound of betrayal has healed with time to where I am starting to mend my relationship again with my family, particularly through his, Dad's, support. While I was visiting home, this opinion manifested in me deciding to cook pork belly for my father as a token of goodwill and time together. But then a disturbance broke our calmness. Then the door opened, and Bibi Titang Yin, Sarah and Dennis. My father echoed my shock, and his previous order for Sarah to remain away had seemingly slipped from his memory. In Sarah's voice, releasing the drama of old injuries, and telling about her application to become a mother was plainly calculated in my mom thinking March would cover September. The demand that followed the gift of $85,000 was delusional at best, and showed her intentions had not changed one bit. I did my best to keep it together as they reveled in their insensitivity and laughed at me for crying. That jaw-clenching, frustrated new response was the punishing realization of how fucking far we still have to go emotionally when those bitches laugh at me. This was the fight that I had fought. There was more than just reopening old wounds. There was my resistance in the balance. It was a clear sign, if any more were needed, that she has not altered in the slightest, and will always put material gain over real reconciliation when Sarah tried to cash in on her pregnancy. Then my father and I stood unswayed against her machination that was a step upward in the healing, an assertion of our respect when disrespected. Healing from betrayal is a long and arduous process with just as many setbacks, but it also provides chances for growth, self-expansion, and the confirmation of one's own personal truth. It was a sobering experience for me as the sting of those barbs lingered. Dennis said something derogatory about anger, only making me look uglier, which was meant to hurt but served merely as a stark reminder of how shallow their assessment ever was. Criticizing me further, as my dad and I stayed silent, that was Sarah revealing herself. It just wasn't a good thing to see their laughter not full of real blessings around me. Next family battle up the ante. Sarah declares she will go back for her birth, completely oblivious, as we all were, to the tectonic plate changes happening within our home's lexicography, with a casual but disingenuous-sounding inquiry as to where our mother was, revealing she was not updated on the most recent familial explosion. Sarah was surprised to learn that our mother had been told to leave, a result of her favoritism towards Sarah and the resulting conflict. One also, which Sarah found it hard to appreciate, said she had suggested at the time of our parents' divorce, of which turmoil in her own life was a cause infrequently dwelt on by Cully and Kavda, that no more proofs were needed. Even after the divorce, Sarah did not lose her self-centeredness. She was looking forward to returning to a support system that did not exist, showing just how out of touch with reality she truly is in the gravity of her actions and what they have cost our family. The notion that she could have her old life back, bearing in mind the immense changes done to it, a statement of denial and selfishness. The loss of all the things that had kept our house warm with a motherly embrace turned what was already an unconventional family landscape into some tundra. The lack of preparation that Sarah had for motherhood was emphasized by her shock upon realizing she would be raising the child to whom she just gave birth. Her complaint about all the work of being a mother was at odds with her goal for glamour. Her response to facing the world of our parents being divorced, and also her part in their divorce proceedings, was instead more imposition upon my father, wanting him to do what she should have availed a lifetime. And her apology to me, despite its facade of sweet make amends, came off as hollow and half-hearted, a final plot for a bit more empathy. Although this should have always been the case, my father told Sarah that night to get lost, and I think from there it became a real turnaround. When he did not yield to her requests, he was setting a firm boundary that their relationship can no longer be about manipulation. When he declared Sarah would no longer be spoken of as his daughter, that hurt because finally it was something concrete for which she had to account, if only in her own mind. This challenging transaction, as stressful and anguished it was to experience, opened the doors of great clarity. It sent the message that respect and responsibility, as well cause and effect, are not topics to be trifled with. They burrow deep into one another's selfishness and hang on presence forever in a family. Before we could learn to progress moving forward from the shadows of our past, healing and understanding would be a long, arduous path. With a mix of horror and understanding, I saw just how distant we had become. You have no right to my care. We're not family. Strangers, my dad said, slicing open the air with his words. Sarah, in shock and feeling betrayed by how thin familial relationships can be when she then finds out a fact of our family unit that has just devastated her perception. We were not related by blood. Dad told me that Sarah had been born from our mom in another marriage of hers before they got married, and I was obviously expecting. This realization also explained the special treatment our mom gave Sarah, maybe to save her from leaving us. But Dad's love for us never faltered, solidifying my role in his heart, no matter the biology. Sarah was staggered and in shock for the first time ever, now knowing she had no biological link with her dad. The girl had always grown up believing they were related by blood, and all of it was now thrown out the window. She reacted in shock and said that she was actually relieved, in an even more twisted manner of speech, painting the father as having such bad genes to which dodging a bullet only made sense. Her plan of trying to capitalize on the situation monetarily and telling us she needs that $85,000 we would have spent for my wedding left me just saying, "I'm sorry pushing you around when your baby is not like pushing a box." Realizing he viewed her as a stranger, Dad stood steadfast in his resolve not to provide any financial support and told Mary she would need ask her mom for help. Dad was unmoved by Dennis's interjection, calling on the father to come help his son. The act was an emphatic rejection not only of Sarah, but also the duties rented by a dead marriage. Sarah's final words were emboldened with bitterness and hatred, painting Dad as the villain she had always envisioned him as. But Dad's explanation revealed a deeper manipulation. Learning that conflicts with the bio father she wanted to disappear as soon as he was replaced by our dad had led Mom into sabotaging her legal adoption of Sarah, placing a financial. Before getting closure on old issues adds a layer of complexity to whatever predicated familial dishonesty. While we were ascertaining these unpleasant truths, it allowed us to observe the complex network of relationships and intentions that had characterized our family. It drove home the notion that familial ties constructed on openness and genuine affection have greater resilience to life's blows, whereas those built on dishonesty and self-interest ultimately corrode, a series of hurt feelings left in their wake. After our parents got remarried, Mom opted to keep her maiden name. The only reason I can figure is it might have been another way for her, and the marriage itself would not be known by Sarah or anyone else on earth. So Dad said that with a tone of disgust, which sort of means either he feels very strongly about it or there is something more than what we see on the surface. The child support money was wasted on Mom's excessive spending and did not benefit Sarah. This only served to widen the gap between Dad and Sarah. It just proved why he also thought she had no right to expect any financial support from him following their divorce. Her demands were like extortion. To Sarah, our father being not supportive was a cold shock, and she noticed the disappointment of her confidence. Dad was cold, she tried to convey with the help of a few responses from me about it. However, we were always reminded that my mother is really heartless. The unexpected arrival at Sarah's parents for her birthing cross-examined my theory. The awareness that she could not trust in reaching out to Mother, and it was very obvious. Accompanied by a simile, my mom would be here when I get home with open arms, only helped me to see how wrongly entitled one is regarding enduring support before gasping over possible abandonment. The truth of the unfolding situation shattered Sarah's belief in our mom loving her no matter what. Her running off to elope with Dennis caused the family schism, which ultimately defined a crack deeper and broader than our parents' divorce or Mom's departure, along with much-needed money meant for Sarah. This fact of deception was made even worse by the knowledge that Sarah had been lied to twice. First about the divorce, and then regarding what happened to all of Mom's money. Confronted with the brutal reality, Sarah became frustrated and desperate for her share of our savings, a plea that I harshly delivered against. You have to ask Mom. I felt Sarah's pain as she battled to try and take it all in, her fear mounting up more when it came down to turning to Dennis for help only he was being Dutchy about everything. Dennis' limp lack of comfort or useful response to Sarah only underscored his own mercenary approach and the fundamental failure on which her long-standing dependency was based. The cry she let out when abandoned in agony became a message of hopelessness, unrecognizable against the stirrings from before for money to help her family and make peace with them. For Sarah, the altercation ended with her leaving, but for us, it was far from over. Then, like a dagger in the heart grabber, Sarah offered to wipe us from her memory. A thing indicating profile removed a crazy act showing how torn apart she was and illustrating just how estranged we had become. As shocking as it seemed, this threat was apparently the cumulative effect of all these revelations and the emotional fallout from years of misunderstandings and manipulations within our family. One night, I was woken by a mass phone call to see that they had finally cut my daughter from the mangled wreckage hours later. Groggy, I replied without totally realizing what was going on, and suddenly there I was watching a live stream. When I saw flames brushing the mouth of our family home, my heart momentarily stopped. The potted plants ablaze, the fire, small at first, looked as though it might consume everything if fueled by a gust of wind. Dennis's face appeared, his voice ominously calm when he asked if maybe I had accidentally left something on, prompting for someone to report me, before revealing that no, it was him who set the fire with a plan apparently designed to scare out of $85K birthday funds, which will be meant as payment toward my wedding. His response was to threaten me that if I did not go and get him the money for putting out his fire, he would blackmail me with this falsehood, just as low a way of getting at money as avoiding payment. I declined, using the words "their mistake." There shouldn't have been anyone there they would not want to disturb Dad since he came out and stayed with me so that they could avoid any potential harassment. Ultimately, their plan was based on a set of false premises, which makes it more irresponsible and unjustifiable. Like we said, things went from 0 to 100 real quick. We turned to see, to our horror, my mother emerging from the burning home with them. She had been an accidental victim of their reckless stunt. No, instead, Sarah's first response after the initial alarm had faded into steamy silence was to request her money so she would not have lost anything, as Mom fell and stammered incoherent from a burn. Fortunately, emergency services arrived in time to put an end to this nightmare scenario. Arrested for arson and exposed as duplicitous buffoons, Sarah, the beard bandit, was revealed. What presumably began as a poorly executed extortion plan wound up in rescheduling fucking mutilation. From behind the bars, they woke up to find themselves facing their actions in reality. A terrible reminder of where reckless ends and criminality begins. Sarah's ensuing arrest and the baby she bore in jail resulted in her ultimately giving up that child, putting a defenseless little one into unfamiliar hands for their own good, to be kept separate from the darkness. The child would have the opportunity for a new beginning, one that could be filled with security and love through foster or adoptive parents. On the other end of that gamut, my mother's body bore physical scars. Sarah and Dennis had not sustained any wounds except to their reputation. It was a tragic moment in the demise of what had once been family, driven to destruction for, mostly wrong practices. We were fragmented and broken afterward, a family that would never be the same again for decades to come. One day she came to know that Dad was no longer selling our old family home, and the next thing, Mom started going in behind his back, trying to steal valuables. She had decided that she would come to live in this house when it appeared unoccupied. Though I remembered how beautiful my mother once was, like Sarah, she had long since stopped becoming a sympathetic figure to me. This was a woman who had betrayed both Sarah and me past the point of my being able to mourn for her, and now she again behaved in an entitled manner while illegally trespassing. Broke up with herself onto our territory, asking that my father assume all responsibility over whatever injuries ensued. Daddy vehemently denied these accusations of her and said that it was illegal for you to trespass and steal. Her defense of the situation and her now married beauty did nothing to diminish my father's position. He maintained that she deserved whatever punishment was appropriate, but not for this. Afterward, while the house did have some minor damage, it was not impossible to live in. We decided to let it go. My father took early retirement, bought a cute little house near the ocean, and I made the otherwise smart decision to move in with him so that we could both work remotely in silence. Our new eco-home had huge windows offering amazing sunsets over the ocean. More surprising were the simple pleasures found in trading city life for rural tranquility. Watching local wildlife wherever we turned, which gave most days an air of adventure. Country living had no shortage of natural encounters, but I met new people too, pushing me towards a gentle giant whose easygoing attitude made him an unlikely target. We were on a peaceful, joyful new page of life with visions to garden together, and my father's choice of wine for our evenings. The loving and kind words from Father were certainly a departure of old, but they also served as balm on some once broken flesh scars that had helped reshape how I viewed me. I fantasized about wearing a princess gown. Something that seemed so impossible was now not only possible but encouraged by my loving father. I giggled, enjoying his good-natured tease, and how our lives had changed for the better. With the nature, fresh starts, and solitude provided by rural living, we found peace in the nothingness of what to expect. Ultimately, we laughed all day long and loved in that giddy way you do when there is nothing left to lose. And for us, this translated into, other than not having much else going on externally, here I sit a damaged man. Somehow we were still engaged with one another.